Hello everyone. Today I will be talking about the SU-57 Felon of the Russian Federation Aerospace Force. The SU-57 is currently a single-seat and a all-weather two-engine air superiority stealth fighter with 3D thrust vectoring nozzles that allows the nozzles to rotate in a 360-degree motion for superior maneuverability, which allows the plane to rotate around in the air in a stall maneuver. It also has an internal weapons bay that helps reduce the RCS and radar cross-section in order to penetrate air defenses. Now, this plane is more advanced than a lot of people likes to think about, especially if you just listen and believe to whatever the Western governments, news, and whoever, anybody that has a very heavy negative view saying that Russia is copying the F-22 or it's not stealthy or any other reasons they can think of, only to give out like a negative PR about it, and also anything else that is Russian made. Um, for instance, like the amount of sensors this plane has allows it to have a 360-degree radar coverage compared to any other plane in the world, where the radar always sits in the nose of the plane, which is normal. Because the plane is always moving forward, it doesn't need to have a radar to the sides. So you have to use your eyes at all times to look around. And I will kind of explain more about the sensors later. Um, Now this video will give you the development, production, cost, the combat records, and specs. And at the end, I will give you the pros and cons and what I think about this plane. Development. Development for the next generation multi-warfighter for the Russian Aerospace Force was not during the late 90s or early 2000s, but it actually started back in 1979 when the Soviet Union needed a next generation aircraft to enter service in the 90s. Pretty much around the same time as the United States where the F-22 was in development back in the 90s and it entered service in the 90s. I mean, in development in the 80s, entered service in the 90s. Sorry. So their idea about the stealth fighter was not a copy of the F-22 at all. It pretty much developed at the same time. But unlike the F-22, it did not enter production, and this plane was called the I-90. And the government wanted it to be a multi-role that it was supposed to replace all the MiGs, like the MiG-29 and such, that is still in service today. Now, Wiki said the Su-27, even though the plane didn't even enter service until 1984. Two projects were designed: a MFI, a multifunctional frontline fighter, and an LFI, late frontline fighter, with work beginning back in 1983. Mikoyan was selected for the MFI and started to develop the MiG 1.44 or 1.42. And also in 1983, Sukhoi started its own design for the next-gen fighter, which produced a four-swept wing called the S-32, which is now called the Su-47 Belarus. Now, with the lack of funds because of the collapse of the Soviet Union back in 1991 and the massive corruption it had afterwards, before President Putin took over, it was delayed heavily and was eventually canceled and then started over again by the Russian Federation Ministry of Defense in 1999, which initiated the PACFA, which means Perspective Aeronautical Complex Frontline Aviation, and the I-21 program, which was announced on April 2001 in order to replace the MiG-29 and the Su-27, which was long past their lifespan. The two planes were designed the Mikoyan E-721 and the Sukhoi T-50, and in April 2002, Sukhoi T-50 was declared the winner. In 2005, the funding for the program was approved and increased even more in 2006. On the 8th of August 2007, the development was completed and the construction of the first plane and testing will begin, with the 3 prototypes that were to be built in 2009, which didn't happen because of several reasons. One of them, I believe, was still mainly due to them recovering from the collapse and corruption. Now, from what I have heard, one of the planes crashed for whatever reason. I could try to look it up, but it could be literally false information from Western nations. And they like to just make stuff up all the time. The Russians giving false information. So there's really no point. Stuff happens all the time. You always see planes crashing. It's nothing new. On the 18th of October, 2007, India signed a contract with Russia for a joint development and investment of $6 billion. Its first flight was on January 29th, 2010, that took place at Kanapo-Dzmigi Airport. By 2014, India voiced its concerns and left the contract in 2018 due to the setbacks because of money issues and problems like using new technology in the plane, which will always give it a lot of problems. Just like we have with the F-35, we still have problems with that plane. But I believe it was mainly because India was having troubles with not only their own economy too, but also because of the Western governments, or mainly the U.S., pressured and made India leave it, which is normal. That we here in the U.S. pressure countries all the time to leave and enter unfavorable contracts. But the plane was mainly having the setbacks and problems due to what I believe is Russia trying to do less trading with the West and trying to get rid of majority of the Western influence that was having over them, and trying to get their own people to buy more local goods to keep the money inside the country instead of it leaving. Production. The production was started in 2019 on the 25th of December 2020. The aircraft entered service and the Russian Air Force expected to receive 22 planes by late 2024 and even more by 2028. Right now, the internet isn't saying how many per month are being built, so I'm guessing it's once it gets done, it gets done. Because unlike the West, Russia still assembles majority of their planes by hand and not relying on machines for everything. And not only that, they're still working on it. But Russia is planning to go into full production of 15 planes a year sometime in 2024 or next year. If the new engines even come out by then. I believe that's what they're waiting for mainly. It's waiting for that new engine. But we will see. Right now, only 32 planes were built, 10 for testing and 22 for the Air Force to use. Now, there are multiple variants for this plane already. You have the regular SU-57, which is now being produced, and you see it flying around on air shows and stuff. Then the SU-57E, which will be the export version. Then the SU-57M, which is the upgraded version of the plane with the better systems, flight controls, and it will also be having the brand new engines. The next variant is the FGFA variant, or Sukhoi HALF-GFA for India. And a few others like a naval version, a two-seater that will be using for both the training and for the Sukhoi S-70 Okhnik UCAV drone, where the co-pilot will be the one controlling the drones, giving them orders, and a single-seated test bed for the drone. Since it's relatively brand new, that is everything I could easily find out right now. It didn't seem that bias of any kind that you can always find on the internet. This plane is brand new, so I won't have much information on it, especially for production and such. So, cost. The cost of buying the plane is around $35 to $50 million USD. The contracted development is 4.7 billion in total and is expected to somehow drop to 3.2 billion. I don't really understand how that works, but these are just rough estimates that I can find for the plane. Now sadly, there is no information about maintenance that I can find, but for all stealth planes, once they reach a certain amount of flight hours, they have to be grounded for a certain amount of time. Pretty much for checking if everything still works and such before they can take off. So let's compare to how much it costs for the new United States Air Force F-35, which is between $86 million to over $100 million. So it's like a massive difference between these two planes on cost. I think it's around 50 million USD, uh, pretty much in total for like the lowest price to the highest price. Um, Now I try to look up on how long it takes for Russian basic training for pilots and stuff like that. It's kind of all over the place, especially the negative PR about it. When I Googled it, it just gave me nothing but the negative PRs. It didn't make sense about what it said. Um, for instance, it said like the pilot training only take like a year or two, and then they only have like a certain amount of hours, which is less than the U.S. I highly doubt that. Russia doesn't have many planes, but they do have good pilots. I will say that. So I went with I thought of going through Chat GPT and looking at it, it makes more sense. It says that basic training is 1 to 2 years, but I don't think you need it to be that long. Here in the U.S., you only have pretty much 7 weeks is usually what our basic is, so probably half of that I will say, which is like, or a little bit less for us is like 3 or more months depending what's going on. And then the flight school is 3 to 4 years at one of the three schools, like the Katskinis Air Force Pilot School, which makes sense. And they have three of these schools. That makes a lot more sense than what Google was saying. It takes years to become a pilot. You can't just rush it through, because then you just get people killed. And you will lose millions of dollars worth of planes. It doesn't matter how many you have or how low it is. That's stupid if you don't have that kind of long of flight school. And it's a little bit more for advanced training too, like a couple more years, but that's a little too long. So I don't know if that's true or not. And then what does make sense is for the SU-57 training, which takes 1 to 2 years. Now, if you compare it to here in the U.S., where basic is 7.5 weeks or a couple months, and then flight training, which is 2 to 3 years, and then when you want to be an F-22 and F-35 pilot, it is around 9 months. So Russian pilots actually takes longer for the stealth fighter training, because they take it like I said before, from what I've seen, it's 1 to 2 years. I don't know if it's that long, but I'd definitely say you should at least have a year or two for training for these type of planes, because they're very expensive and they're very advanced. It doesn't take much for you to ground it into the ground, smash it into the ground. Especially how maneuverable Russian planes are just right off the bat. The Russian military pilots make an average of 2,378,771 per year, or 1,144 per hour in rubles. Or in the USD, it is $26,342.99 a year, or $12.67. Now, if you're not that well knowledgeable of how the Russian economy is over there, it's entirely different than here in the US or any other Western nations. Usually when you go to different nations, they have an entirely different economy. That's just how it works. Let's say here in the U.S., a gallon of milk costs like what I think for me living in Wisconsin is $5 to $6 depending where you're at. But in Russia, it could cost around maybe $2 to $3. So the average person does not need to make a lot of money in order to make a living. Unlike in the U.S., where even if you make $17 to $18 an hour, it doesn't really help much making a living, especially if you have a family or you live by yourself. Combat record. Since the plane is newly produced and it's really brand new for only a few years, Russia is only using it in certain situations or not using it at all. But you should be using it in certain situations. Whether you believe any of the information, like the news from Western nations and Ukraine, so called intelligence, about the Su-57, where they like to claim that the Su-57 did limited sorties. Uh, in the West, we like to claim Su-57 was used in Syria and Ukraine. Now, I do believe they did use the Su-57 in these areas, mainly simply for testing them out in active combat situations, especially in Ukraine, where right now Russia destroyed majority of Ukraine's equipment back in when they were still using the Soviet Union equipment, and now they're using nothing but Western inventory. So more than 90% of their inventory is Western, pretty much NATO weaponry. Since everything, like I said before, everything else got destroyed or captured. It's been 2 years, so that makes sense. And so it is Ukraine is the perfect test bed to see how well this plane will work out against Western nations' weaponry. Now, nothing is better than an active war zone to see how your weapon systems work out, and to test new weapons in a country that uses a weapon, any kind of weapon, from a hostile group of nations that you will eventually be at war with each other. So it is only a matter of time. But it will allow Russia to have the ability to figure out how their weapons work against ours. And anything we use new against them, they will figure out how to use against us. So when war does happen, they will have more of an advantage over us. That is the price we are paying for the West when we send weapons over there. Russia has already figured out how to counter a lot of the stuff we already sent over there. But that's pretty much what's going on. I don't know if it killed anything or not. That's what Ukraine is saying, and I'm gonna actually believe it because I will use. That's something I will do if I have a new plane and I'm at war with a nation, and they're mainly using weapons from nations that have been extremely hostile to me. I will use that plane to see how well it works and see what needs to be improved to make it better. Specifications: the Su-57 has one crew until the other variants for the two-seater comes out. The length is 65 feet 11 inches or 20.1 meters. Then the wingspan is 46 feet 30 inches or 14.1 meters. The height is 15 feet 1 inch or 4.6 meters. The empty weight is 39,683 pounds or 18,000 kilograms. The gross weight is 55,116 pounds or 25,000 kilograms. The max weight is 77,162 pounds or 35,000 kilograms. The fuel capacity is 22,700 pounds or 10,300 kilograms. The power plant is 2 Saturn AL41F1 afterburner turbofan with 19,900 pounds of force or 88.3 kilonewtons of dry thrust. And with the afterburners, it is 32,000 pounds of force or 142.2 kilonewtons. Now, this engine will be replaced by something much more powerful, and it's called the Isdali 30. Now, I don't know how long that's going to be, and I'm not going to go over the stats of that engine because there's really no point until it comes out. Because until then, it's just words on a spreadsheet, and words being said, like right now with the Su-57 stats. So, until that engine comes out, some of these stats are just going to be the old stats. Or the max speed is Mach 2, or 1,327 miles per hour, or 2,135 kilometers per hour. At the high altitude, no, sorry, that was a high altitude. Sorry, I lost myself there. And at sea level, it is Mach 1.3, or 997 miles per hour, or 1,605 kilometers per hour. At Super Cruise, it is Mach 1.6 or 1,227 miles per hour, or 1,974 kilometers per hour. The ferry range is 2,200 miles or 3,500 kilometers, or 2,796 miles or 4,500 kilometers with the external fuel tanks. The regular range is 930 miles or 1,500 kilometers. At surface sailing, it can climb up to 66,000 feet or 20,000 meters. The plane's G limit is plus 9 Gs. The thrust rate ratio is a 1.16. Now, like I was saying before, do not believe these numbers right now because these are just estimates through observation or whatever Russia decides to let out to be. But some of these stats will change, especially once it gets its new engine, especially like the speed, how much it can carry can probably change too, because the better engines will allow it to carry more and such like that. And it's, stuff like that. So it will change once they get the new plane, new engines. For the armaments, the plane has one 30mm Ryazov Shipanova. I don't know why I keep saying Shipanova. It's Shipanov GSH-301 autocannon. I don't know how many rounds it can carry. I didn't see how much it can carry, but the weapon will shoot up to 1,500 or 1,800 rounds per minute. The plane has 12 hard points, 6 internal and 6 external. For the air-to-air weapon missiles, it has R-77M, R-74M2, R-37. For the air-to-ground is 4 KH-38Ms, 4 KH-59MK2s, and KH-69. For the anti-ship, it is 2 KH-35Us, 2 KH-31s. The anti-radiation missiles is 4 KH-58USHKs, a KAB 250 pound or kilogram, 250 kilogram guided bomb, KAB 500 kilogram guided bomb, and a 500 kilogram cluster bomb plus active homing. For the avionics, it has a SH-121 multifunctional integrated radio electronic system, or MIRES, a Bielka radar number 36101 frontal X-band ASAR radar, which I believe is the regular radar that sits inside the nose. Then a number 36B101 cheek X bone ASAR radars for increased angular coverage. Those would be the ones that's plastered around the plane. And then I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And then it has number 36L101/L band arrays for identify friend or foe. L402 Himalayas electronic countermeasure suite. 101KS auto electro-optical targeting system. 101 KSO laser directional infrared countermeasure. 101 KSV infrared search and track. 101 KSU ultraviolet missile approach warning system. 101 KSN targeting pod. 101 KSP thermal imager for low altitude flying and night landing. It has a estimated value that the SU-57 RCS, or radar cross section, is 0.1 to 1 square meter. The pros and cons. Now, there is always a pro and con for everything, and I will be going into the pros first. And they are stealth, multi-role, trend engines, thrust vectoring. It has around 4 sensors, capable of high angle of attacks. It's the cheapest 5th gen. It's brand new. There are so few. Now for stealth, the plane has one, I mean, zero point 0.1 to 1 square meter of RCS. Now there are people out there, including especially in the West, are saying that this plane is not stealthy at all, and always trying to compare Russian planes with the West. Now this plane is stealthy, and you can never compare Russian plane with the Western plane. They're not built the same way. They're completely different. Even if it kind of looks somewhat the same, it's still a completely different plane because it's built with a different purpose, really. For one of the reasons why this plane is stealthy is that Ukraine claims that the Su-57 was used in a conflict mainly due to a certain munition, pretty much a shrapnel of it, that was used in a bombing one. And only the Su-57 can really carry it. So therefore you can believe actually Ukraine for that, which is very rare that Ukraine actually will tell the truth about something. um, so therefore the plane was able to penetrate Western air defenses, which in the West we claim is the best air defenses in the world. Like always trying to boast about it, and yet here you got this plane flying in, drop its munition, and leave with ease, and no one knows about it except for the shrapnel of the munition. Multi-role. It is a jack of all trades and a master of none. It is capable of carrying an air-to-air and air-to-ground munitions for certain situations. Now, mostly when you have a multi-role plane and you have it equipped with bombs, it's usually not that very maneuverable, and it's because it weighs a lot more. This plane, on the other hand, is extremely maneuverable, to where it is capable of air, straight up dogfighting with anything that fights with it in the air. It may not move as fast, but it will dance around in the sky trying to get on your six, pretty much. Twin engines. This plane has 2 engines that allows the plane to fly. So if something happens to one of the engines, like a malfunction or in combat one of them got destroyed or something like that, it will still be able to go back home and land and get it replaced and repaired up. And not only that, I do believe it helps with cost. It definitely helps with fuel efficiency and thrust to weight ratio compared to a single engine, where you have to make it more expensive and cost more powerful just to be able to get it off the ground, and therefore it eats up into more of the fuel. Thrust vectoring. The plane has a 3D thrust vectoring, which enables it to move even in a stall maneuver, and the thrusters rotate in a 360-degree rotation. Now, what is the difference between the F-22 and the Su-57? You might be asking, because they both have thrust vectoring nozzles. The F-22 thrusters only move up and down, and also equipped with something kind of look like bills, I'm trying to think here. I can't really think of a good explanation. Maybe like a choker for a buckshot of a shotgun, and it helps disperse the heat of the thrust, and also helps with maneuverability too, obviously. But with the Su-57 thrusters, they rotate in a 360-degree rotation, and I will put up a video here, and it will show some insane movers that with planes that have these equipped. But it doesn't reduce the heat of the thrust very much compared to the F-22. It has around 4 sensors. The plane has a radar in the nose, which is completely normal in all aircraft. It sits right in the nose and it scans out in front of it at all times, unless it's turned off. And then you have 2 on the wing, 1 on each wing and 1 on the tail, and some more sensors around the plane, just to help with electronic warfares and stuff like that. So that will help the pilot concentrate more on flying in front of him, more than he needing to constantly look around compared to any other aircraft, where you only have the radar in the front and the pilot has to literally look around, look in mirrors, trying to look behind him and see where the planes are at. That radar will help the pilot know exactly where not exactly where the plane is, but a general idea where it is behind, if it's behind him or to his left or right, in a blind spot. It's capable of high angle of attacks. This plane can shoot its missiles at a 90-degree angle upwards, which is amazing right there already. Right? It's capable of doing pretty much stalling its stuff out and shooting its weapon. Now, if you're not entirely too sure what a high angle attack means, you're pretty much stalling your plane because you no longer have that airlift under the wings in order to keep it afloat in the air. And right now, I don't know any other plane that's capable of doing that. So this is a big pro. It's the cheapest of the 5th gens. This plane is the cheapest of all stealth planes. It's around $50 million cheaper than the F-35 depending on the variant. It's around $65 million cheaper than the J-20, which is China's stealth plane, and $310 million cheaper than the F-22. And this is my opinion here. This is a massive pro. Anything that's nice and cheap is always a pro because that means you can house more of these. It's brand new. Now, why you're asking why this is considered a pro? The reason is because it's so new that there is no good information about this plane. No accurate information. Everything's through observation or wherever the Russians decide to say it. Now, so the only ones who knows exactly what the stats are the Russians and the pilots, and they ain't gonna be stupid enough to let that information out. So these are just rough estimates. Everything, even if you hear from other people, it's rough estimates, unless the Russian government explicitly specifies these are the stats. And because it's so new, nothing in the arsenal of any Western government is designed to kill it, unless it's literally brand new, and it's just got done being developed and it's in the process of being produced. Until then, nothing's designed to hunt this plane down. The newest plane that we have in our arsenal in the U.S. is the F-35, and that's been out since 2006. So that Su-35 is not designed to shoot this plane down, while the Su-57 came out much later than that, which has plenty of time for the Russians to figure out how that plane works and be able to knock it out of the sky with this plane. So, and not only that, you also have a lot of the U.S. so-called studying of any Russian arsenal by forcing their own worthless opinions on it. So, try not to believe anything that's Western, because unless they're independent, kind of like me, then it's a little bit more trustworthy, especially if they seem like it. I don't know. Some aren't, some are. There are so few. The reason why this is a pro too is because there are so few of these that Russia doesn't have to pay so much a year on maintenance and on pilots. And it's much easier to maintain them at all the time compared to the U.S. F-35s, where we are making over 100 a year, and we don't even have the parts and tools to maintain them year round, and yet we're still trying to make these and trying to get a lot of pilots per year. Where we don't even have the manpower because nobody wants to sign up anymore. So, sometimes having smaller numbers is far better than a lot, especially if you don't really have the economy or anything like that. And right now, we don't have the economy to maintain all these F-35s and maintain them all the time, including the pilots. Now, for the cons, some of it is exactly the same as pros, because like I said, there's always a pro and con for everything. Stealth, multi-wall, thrust vectoring. It has 4 sensors, capable of high angle of attack. It's brand new. There are so few. It's daily 30 engines, not out yet. The plane will be exported. Stealth. Stealth will always be a pro and con because it is useful when it comes to penetrating air defenses and making hostile planes harder to find, pretty much track you and lock on. But the main con is it can only carry a limited amount of ammunitions at a time, which is like as before, is a big con. Because in order to use stealth, you have to hold him internally. And you can carry more on hardpoints externally, but if you do anything like bombs, missiles, it doesn't matter. You will lose all advantage of being stealthy because those munitions are not designed to be stealthy, and they're designed for a single purpose. So it's just if you want to carry more munitions, it's better just to have a regular plane that's not stealthy at all, because they can carry more and it doesn't matter at that point, whether it's stealthy or not. Montserrat. It is a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Master of none. It can use both air to air and air to ground, but it will never be able to match a plane that's specifically designed for a single purpose, like air superiority or bombers, or CAS, which is close air support, like the 810. When it comes to destroying targets, especially like the 810, will do way better than anything that's multi-role because just it will be able to carry nothing but air-to-ground munitions, and it is designed to just to take out ground targets specifically, compared to a multi-role where it has to be designed for everything. Thrust vectoring. This plane is equipped with 3D thrust vectoring, but the reason for it being a con is because it actually weighs more than any regular thrusters does. It also costs more because you have to add hydraulics to them and extend the thrusters out a little bit more, so on and so on. And it really comes down to what the visual person and what the government thinks of them. The West doesn't really think very highly of the thrust vectoring, while Russia thinks very highly of it. Me personally, I like thrust vectoring. To me, it makes so much more sense having them for modern planes, especially how technology works. It does help with maneuverability and dodging and missiles and planes trying to get on their six and trying to stay alive a little longer. It has 4 sensors. Now, the reason why this is also a con is that when the pilot turns it on, the sensors will light up the plane on every single radar. It will be letting you know exactly where it is at all times. Um, that is a big con, but usually at that point, if he has it all on, he doesn't really care. He's already spotted and probably being hunted down, so he wants it on. So you can see what's going on. It allows him to see what's going on and trying to react to it as best as he can. Capable of high angles of attack. Now, this plane is capable of attacking its target at a very steep angle, which is always a pawn. But the con is it leaves the plane extremely exposed to any kind of attack. And there will be nothing you can do about it because you just stalled your plane. And you have to try to regain the momentum, the kinetic energy back again. So as long as there's nobody coming to attack you or whatever, and you got the advantage of attacking first, it is always a con because it's the best way to attack an enemy because he won't expect it at all. But it's a con because it literally leaves the plane extremely exposed to everything. Brand new. Now, why this is a con is because you are trying to find faults and flushing them all out, which leads to an increase of development costs, increasing the cost of the plane. But so far, it seems what I've seen already, Russia already flushed out a lot of them out compared to the F-35, where we don't even have these fully fixed or anything like that, and it's in full swing production. And we are building these a lot, and we are losing quite a few already. Why so few? I don't see this as a con mainly due to the fact that there is not enough to be properly used in a large-scale war, like when World War III happens. But Russia has never been a military that builds a large air force unless it needs to. It's just how they have always been. They never had a large navy. They only build it if it needs comes to it. They only have a large air force when it comes to it. They have always been more of a ground force military. Is DD 30 engines not out yet? Until this engine comes out, this is going to be a major con for this plane. because the Su-57 is designed for this engine, really. That is it. It's not designed for the current engine, which is for the Su-35. So it will not be able to use its full potential until it does. Now, once it finally comes out, I will be posting an update video. This con will no longer be here. It will be a Pro. Now, why it's taken so long, you might be asking. This is my belief here. A lot of people have their own reasons, so I won't be saying that. But it's mainly due to that they're trying to use new tech. Whenever you use new tech, it usually always ends up stuff like this, where it takes so long. They're having so many problems with it. For the F-35 Bravo, it took a while because it was using completely new technology for the STIVO, the short takeoff and landing, where it allows it to take off vertically and land. That took a while to do, and that's one of the reasons why its development and it has so many problems. It's because of that plane. The plane will be exported. This is a con mainly due to the fact that Russia is going to sell one of their most advanced aircrafts to other countries, in which these countries will be able to steal the tech for themselves or sell it to other nations like the US. And it just happens. People are like that. So that is a big con. You should never sell your most advanced equipment, no matter what, until you have something that can easily replace it. That's my belief on that. Now, that is it for the pros and cons that I can think of right now. So unlike the F-35, where it had a lot of cons that really hurts it, and the Su-57 really doesn't, it's pretty much roughly the same. It has like two more cons than pros, but it's mainly due to one is the export, which will always be a con, and one that will be taken out once it gets its new engines. And the reason why it doesn't have as much cons compared to pros, is mainly due to the fact that the Russians really want this plane to work. Unlike the F-35, where it's built for profit, this plane is built to actually fight in a war. That is the difference mainly there between those two planes. Now, for my opinion of this plane, it's extremely high. I really do like this plane. It's very advanced, especially for a new plane like this. The very first stealth plane that the Russians were able to produce. It is very advanced, a lot more than you think. And if it wants to, Russia always has the ability to make more, despite what the West is trying to say that the sanctions is hurting it. That's not true at all. The majority of those materials Russia did buy from other countries in order to lessen the cost of buying it within their own country, to also help with the economy of other nations. That's how trade works, you know. But now with the sanction, it has to use its own. But Russia already had its own facilities making it all. There have been more. Their economy, I shouldn't say an economy. They have every single resource they need, pretty much, compared to the majority of the nations out there, when they have to rely on other nations. Other than that, this plane, I don't see anything wrong with it. There's another stealth plane that the Russians are working on. So we'll see by then. This plane is extremely maneuverable to anything in the rest that it has. If the sensors, all the radars and sensors get turned on, this plane will be able to see pretty much anything that's trying to sneak up on it, pretty much. Russia, in my opinion, has the most advanced radars in the world. So that's child's play for them to find other planes. So, yeah, that's all I can think of. Thank you for watching. I hope this video was educational and it made you guys think nice and hard about this plane, whether you think this plane is a great plane that the Russians have built so far, or think it is worthless and a waste of money that could be put into something better. Now, if you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe, so you can watch whenever I post a video when I'm able to. Share it and leave a comment below. And let me know what you think about this plane in video. Till next time, guys.